evening, friends. Welcome to the Saturday evening program at the 23rd Annual MEA Ecology Association Convention. Very thrilled to be introducing our guest speaker this evening, a lovely person, family to the MEA Ecology Association. Tiffany Shlain is an artist, Emmy-nominated filmmaker, founder of the Webby Awards, and author of the national bestseller 24/6, The Power of Exhibit Unplugging One Day a Week, winner of the Marshall McLuhan Outstanding Book Award from the MEA. She is also the recipient of the 2022 Neil Postman Award for Career Achievement in Public Intellectual Activity. The Museum of Modern Art in New York premiered the presentation, or a version of the presentation that she'll be delivering for you tonight, Dear Human, with a live cinematic score right before the pandemic. Tiffany's work has received over 80 awards and distinctions, including being selected for the Albert Einstein Foundation's Genius 100 Visions of the Future as one of the 100 people carrying on his legacy. Her films have premiered at top festivals, including Sundance, and were selected by the US State Department to represent America around the world. She is currently the artist in residence at Shack 15, working on a new body of visual work, and we're extremely lucky, happy, thrilled to have her with us tonight. Please give a warm welcome to Tiffany Shlain.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. It does feel like family, besides the fact that Lance was telling me last night about my father who used to speak at this gathering. He spoke 3 times, and I feel his presence here. But I've loved getting to know so many of you. I wanted to thank Mike and Lance and Adriana and everyone here for making me feel so welcome, and I'm loving this exchange of ideas. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask you to do something. I would love for you all to put away your phones. I mean, for real. Like, zip them up in a bag and be with me for the next hour, if you could. A lot of my work explores what it's like to just be together without the phone. And actually, as a speaker, if I see any one of you pull out your phone and text, it's very hard for me to concentrate. So just as I came here from California to be with you, so just be with me. Now, this is a version of a show I did at the Museum of Modern Art. And for that performance, I had a live music, I had but here in Rio, my first time in your beautiful place, I have the live essence of all of you. So it's going to be, I've only done this talk really once, right before the pandemic. And then the whole world shut down, and it actually gave me a lot of new thinking about it. So I'm excited to take this journey with you again. So, dear human, I was at a restaurant recently, and I went into the bathroom, and there was a woman standing outside of the sinks, just like shaking. And I went up to her, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I'm on the spectrum, and I'm overstimulated, and I'm trying to catch my balance." And I kind of didn't quite know what to do, but I just stood beside her, and she was shaking, and I was just kind of breathing with her. And soon she kind of calmed down, and then she said, "Thank you," and then I went back into the restaurant. And I've been thinking a lot about her, because it feels like as a society, we're really overstimulated right now. We're constantly staring at these devices everywhere we go. And in New York, I half expect to walk by the Statue of Liberty and see the Statue of Liberty checking its phone. Or here. But really, we look a lot like this. This is this wonderful photographer, Eric Pinkerstill, and he just recorded our reality. This is what we're doing all the time, whenever we're together. It's just staring at these little devices in our hands. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot coming through the phones. Have you ever caught yourself looking down at the phone? It's super unattractive. Like sometimes the camera's on, and you're like, ah, and you're like, first of all, it's very unattractive to be staring down all the time. But also, you can really run into people. You can kind of be a jerk when you're walking down the street and you're staring at your phone and you're getting eye contact. Now, I just grabbed this combination of images today because there's a lot coming at us through the phones. Immense gun violence, there's the war in Ukraine, there's the pandemic. That's all coming at us, along with, of course, all the kind of social connection, and there's good stuff in there too, but that's a lot to be stimulating your brain all the time. And you think you're so engaged, but really, are you just putting your head in the sand? Because you think you're so up on everything happening, but what are you doing? But staring at your little screen in your little hand all the time. Now, when you stare down, you don't see the bigger picture. And it's really important to step away so that you can see the bigger picture. So, how did we get here? Do you want to go on a little time machine with me back in history? Are you guys ready? Okay. So we're going to go back many, many moons ago, many phases of technology ago. Not the 90s, we're going to go back to the 80s. Do you remember that phone? Remember that? So that's me, 1982. And my parents had just gotten divorced, which totally sucked. I was very unhappy in my house. And my dad got me that. Remember that? Actually, I had the Apple IIe before that. Do we have any good computer nerds in the house that they got that Apple Lisa? So I got that Mac, and I was so excited because this was before the web. So anyone here that's like, this is before there was the web. So this is actually what your desk used to look like. It's just like you were just there. You didn't really leave your desk area. This is what it looked like. That was Instagram. That was Skype. It was Skype. I should change that. But it was a very different time. But 1984, I had a Macintosh and I had a modem. You guys remember that song? I'm teasing. I'm just like, not the students are gonna remember that one. But I was 14 and I had this computer and a modem, and I used to connect. There was no web. I would connect to the library, which was incredibly thrilling at the time. That's me in high school. And so this was my best friend. Her family was from Iran and I'm Ukrainian. So we were both from these enemy countries. And we both were computer nerds. And we were like, let's write a proposal to unite students who are into computers from all over the world. So we wrote this one-page proposal called UNITAS, United Nations in Telecommunications and Software. And we sent it to our congressperson. And she wrote me back. I said, what if students from, at the time it was called Russia, and Soviet Union, and Iran and America all communicated and maybe world peace would happen? Well, I got a letter back from her, and I was invited to go to the Soviet Union to talk about personal computers. Now, this is my grandfather, who escaped from Odessa, Ukraine, was horrified about me going back there. His whole family was killed. And didn't want me to go. I'm like, oh no, I have to go back there. I'm gonna find our relatives, because who knows, maybe they're still there. He was very upset with me, but I went to the Soviet Union, and this was the song. That was in 1988 with my Walkman. I would listen to that song and over and over again. And I thought, computers and technology are going to bring the world together. So that didn't really happen because no one had personal computers in the Soviet Union. They were in lines for food. And it was really the first time that I thought the power of technology to connect us, but it was also really way ahead of its time. This was 1988 at this point. Then I went to UC Berkeley. I was supposed to be a surgeon. I studied film theory and media theory, and ended up paying for my films in CD-ROM. I worked in the CD-ROM industry. Does everyone remember the CD-ROM industry? Let's just take a moment to remember the CD-ROM industry.
CD-ROM stands for compact disc read-only memory. But instead of putting the disc into a CD player, it goes into the computer.
The number of CD-ROM titles available must be 100. When we reach 10,000, 20,000, you're going to see those things.
The potential for CD-ROM is almost limitless.
That was the next big thing. But what a CD-ROM was is it didn't leave your computer. It was like a whole world in your computer, but it was how I made for my documentaries. I'd work on CD-ROMs and I'd work on my movies and I'd go back and forth. And at the time, I got asked to design a CD-ROM for state. It was like my total heartthrob at the time, so it was very exciting. And it's 1994 now, so I graduated from school in 1994, and somebody says to me, Tiffany, there's this thing called a website. And I saw a website where fans of Sting's music all over the world are on the same thing, on this thing called the web. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I was writing about in high school, it just didn't exist. It's here, it's gonna change the world. So I was absolutely as obsessed as you could be. I told anyone who would listen to me, there's this thing called the web and it's here and it's gonna change the world. And shortly after that, I started the Webby Awards when I was 26 years old. That's a long time ago. But I'll show you a clip of the early days of the Webby Awards, just so you can get a sense of I'd like to welcome you to the first annual Webby Awards live from San Francisco. We all know that the true international language is HTML.
I'm John Norris with MTV News Brief. It's a computer view of what looks like a slinky and performance. I heard acceptance speech, a Webby Awards, Oscars of the Web.
Everything you say is true. Please don't recount this vote.
So that was the founders of Google's. 3 months after they started, they rollerbladed onto the stage, just like the Oscars, the web. And they wore capes. It was a much different time. They wore capes and rollerblades. And this is what it felt like back then. This would be in my 20s in San Francisco when Webby started.
Make a wish. Come to me.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of your imagination.
We were all so excited that we were creating this new medium together that was decentralized and was going to change the power structure. But as Sophocles once said, nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse. So around that time, so now I'm running the Webby Awards for a couple years, and I used to get flown into New York to be on Good Morning America to kind of describe this thing from the future called the web. And I was starting to see cracks in the system, like all of the money started to rush in, the business models of the web. But this was something that concerned me early on.
Today, something that anyone with a computer knows all too well is your email, also known as spam. But you can get rid of it, and here to show us how is our internet expert, Tiffany Shlain, founder of the Webby Awards. Tiffany, good morning, good to have you here.
Good morning.
First of all, who sends all this stuff?
Well, it's everyone from content to companies, and basically email is convenient, it's free. So all the benefits of email are its curse right now.
How soon might we have legislation that would put this kind of business out of business?
We're hoping really soon. I mean, there are laws that are saying it might require companies to say, I am a paid advertisement, and then you could filter them out of your email box. It might require companies say, I'm a paid advertiser. This was the beginning of the downfall of the web. The business model changed. And back in the early days of the web, remember, it was a public utility. It was seen as like, to me, I mean, Wikipedia still is the most beautiful example of the web to me, where it's like everyone's contributing to this vast amount of knowledge. And it was like this utopian way to share information. But once the companies started coming in, I just distinctly remember the year when it felt like they were all like, there's gold in those mountains. And like everything started changing. And of course, your data was what they were buying. It was just like oil, but everything you did, every behavior you did wasn't interesting to them because then they sold it to advertisers. And the term when I was running the Webby Awards in the early days was stickiness. I want to stick your eyeballs. Do you guys remember, does anyone remember like how sticky is your website? They want to glue your eyeballs to the screen. That was the term. If you had a successful website, you were very sticky, which sounds horrible, really. But you're trying to glue your eyes to the screen. And, you know, of course, now there's a lot more ways that they're following you around with every move you make. And it made me think again, stick. And I started to feel like this thing that I love started to just like operate my every move. It started to influence my behavior. And of course, we know that there's engineers and social psychologists all working to help figure out how to keep you glued. So you're at a lecture hall, and what do? You want to pull out your phone when you have all these brilliant people here. What is that about? How can you compete with thousands of engineers trying to keep you glued to the screen? And I'm guilty of it to this day. Like sometimes, I'm just gonna go on Instagram for a second. I'm like, ooh, and I literally feel like I can't, and I'm in it, and I'm like, saying to myself, get off the screen, get off the screen. And it's like, it's taken over my mind. And the crazy thing about it is you can never get enough. It's like you're always hungry. That's what it's designed to do, is make you feel like you're never satiated. You just want more. You want another like. You want another stressful news headline. You want another email. You want more. You're never satisfied. It's exactly how they wanted it. And it was not the vision of the web in the early days. It was not what we were all so excited about. I mean, the web has such huge potential, and obviously it's turned into a lot of this. And of course, we know it's addictive. It's operating on all the same functions. They're using the same things as in gambling and drinking and smoking. And actually, I used to be a smoker. It's something I'm proud of. But I remember that feeling where I'd be smoking and I'd think, I want another cigarette. That's the bad feeling. Like, I'm on the email, like, I want another email. Like, what is that? It's so crazy. So I think maybe we should just smoke the phone and kind of cut out the middleman in the situation. And soon there probably will be a Surgeon General warning on the phone. You'll be manipulated and lost attention. And everyone feels that way. I talk all over, and everyone feels the same sense of addiction through all the different age groups. And of course, in our country, I'm sure it's happening in your country because you have a similar president, but it's really messing with our sense of truth and democracy. It's starting to feel like this.
What's that tunnel up there? Hey, look, I went off. Strange. Yeah, strange, Johnny, but it's fun. I can make a joke with a filter club. John, gotta turn it around, look out.
Hey, slowly, which direction we are going?
That's what it's starting to feel like. It's like we've all been living in an experiment, and we're suddenly at this Frankenstein moment right now. Now, I want you all have been great, by the way. You all put your phones away. I now want you to actually turn your phones off. Can you grab your phone where it is and just actually turn it off for a second? I want you to see what that feels like. It's been so long since people actually turn off their phone. First of all, any machine is good to turn it off. But the human machine, it's really good to actually turn it off. So I want you to all turn off your phone. And I know that might give some of you anxiety. Is it all on? Once it's on, please put it back away so I don't see it. There's studies that just visually, a phone off on a table when you're studying, you won't be able to focus because it's calling you. Even off, you can't focus. So if I see any of your phones off, I still won't be as focused or with you, and I want to be with you. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Now, when I was growing up, my father was a surgeon, and he used to have a beeper. And when we would go to the movies, which we always loved going to the movies, his beeper would go off, and only doctors and drug dealers had beepers. So like everyone would stand up for my dad and like hurt, and we would rush to the emergency room because he was saving someone's life. So it was I grew up with that sense of when a beeper goes off. Now I have such anxiety that my phone's gonna go off like at this conference or somewhere. I'm in a state of anxiety all the time that my phone is gonna interrupt some moment that it shouldn't. And just to go back a long time ago, there's been a lot of hand-wringing about technologies. Socrates worried with the invention of the written word, we were gonna lose our memory. That was the big concern back then. And when I was growing up, did you have the Brady Bunch in Brazil? No? It was bad 70s television, but when I was growing up, my parents were really worried that television was gonna turn our brain to mush. Was that a concern here in Brazil? Like you just watch mindless television, so that's what everyone was really worried about. But the big difference between a television and that supercomputer is you can't bring a television and drag it into the bathroom or the beach or the bedroom, right? So you never are gonna get away from all that stuff coming at you all the time. And I really do look to 2007 as a really critical moment. Because before the computer was on your desk, but then the minute that Steve Jobs said this,
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything.
it all went with you all the time. You never had a break from the world coming at you all the time. And I make a lot of films about neuroscience. My father was a brain surgeon, my mother is a psychologist, and I've made many films about the brain. In every study, the more you do something, the more your brain will change to adapt to whatever you're doing. So the more you're flicking your wrist every second, the less you're gonna be able to focus on anything. And I think about, it used to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and now I have 2 teenagers. Now it's text, likes, snaps, and scrolls. And actually they're not having sex as much, at least in America. They're not getting their driver's license as much. Like I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. Like take me away, let me drive, let me just freedom. And of course I was just thinking the other day, this is a thought I had in Brazil, as I was watching a whole bunch of people taking selfies of themselves, which they do in America too, but I don't like watching people take selfies of themselves. I feel like I'm not supposed to be seeing this. It's like, feels like vaguely like, don't do that in front of me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're witnessing something that's a little, it's like very full of vanity and kind of gross. And you're like, don't let me, just be in private when you do that. So that was just a new reflection. Anyways, but obviously there's a lot of incredible things. My younger daughter, she makes tons of great films on the technology, and I do love it. Also, the direction that we've been heading in is not one that I'm not psyched about. I think that, is that not responding to me? My mom is a psychologist, and she says this great thing that vulnerabilities, what success distances you from people and vulnerabilities bring you closer. Most of social media is like the highlights of your life. So what are you doing is you're pushing people away. And it's an interesting thing because everyone knows it and we all play into this kind of performative thing that ultimately doesn't make people feel that good about themselves. And when my kids were younger, I don't know if you've heard this, but they would say like, if you have a fun play date, don't talk about the fun play date in front of somebody that wasn't at the fun play date. That's like one-on-one and being a good friend. Social media is like, I'm at the fun play date and you weren't there. On a magnified level, quadrupled, magnified all the time, and something really fun that you're not at. I was talking to somebody who works with mothers and babies, a Lamaze class, I don't know if you have that in Brazil, but she said it's a 1-hour class once a week, and she couldn't get the women to put their phone down for 1 hour to be with their babies. And babies' brain growth is from eye contact, and the mothers wouldn't put their phone away for just 1 hour. And even dogs, I'm a big dog lover, I'm missing my dog so much, you know, but they don't want you to be on your phone all the time either, right? They push it away when you're on your phone too much. And empathy and eye contact, that's what makes us human. We just experienced that so much from the pandemic of like, we need that eye contact, we need that connection, we need all of the physical, I was talking, where the teacher of where did she just go? She's teaching all the interpreters. We're talking how much like Zoom keeps you in a box, like so much of communication comes from people's body language. So if you're talking to somebody, you're like, you're missing out on like 75% of what they're saying. And we're reading more than ever, but we're skim reading, just skimming the surface of everything because we're not reading in a focused way. So 13 years ago, I kind of had it. I couldn't concentrate anymore. I loved being able to concentrate, and suddenly I felt like that. Like every time I tried to get a thought out, I was just the notifications, everything. And then one week, I had this very dramatic week where my father, who I was so close to, who's my best friend, his name's Albert Einstein Foundation, and he was diagnosed with brain cancer, and he was given 9 months to live. And it was the same week I found out I was pregnant after having 5 miscarriages. And I was like, life literally stopped for me. And it felt like, what am I doing? What matters? I felt like life was grabbing me by the shoulders and just like telling me to just like look at the way that you're living. And so those 9 months were completely intense. My father was dying, with his daughters, my stomach was growing, and all I thought about was life and death. And I talked to my dad a lot, who knew a lot about the brain, and he knew it was going down in his brain as well. So we talked a lot about focus and attention, because sometimes he only had 1 good hour a day. And when I would go visit him, I'd turn off that fucking phone. And I was completely focused on him. And then he died. And my daughter was born days later. And I just wanted to change the way I was living. And we have 30,000 days on this earth. If you live the average life expectancy, that's 30,000 days. How do you want to live those 30,000 days? So I would like everyone to put your hand on your heart with me for 1 second. Close your eyes and find your heartbeat. And your heart beats 100,000 times a day. And someday it's going to stop. So I was like, what are you going to do with those heartbeats while you're here? So I thought a lot about that. And this is my husband, Ken, who's here in Rio with me. And we're Jewish. I say that because we're not religious Jews. But I like to say we're more of culinary Jews. I love the Jewish food. I love the Jewish comedy. I love the Jewish ideas. I just don't believe in the religion. But Ken is a professor of robotics, and he lived in Israel while he was studying at the Robotics Institute, Technion. And the whole country shuts down. Most people don't really grok that. The whole country of Israel shuts down 1 day every week for Shabbat. Now, how many of you know what the concept of Shabbat is? Okay, so about half. So it's the 4th commandment. So I know there's a lot of Catholics in Brazil. The 4th commandment in Christians is, you shall take a day of rest. You shall not work. And for the Jews, it means Friday night to Saturday night. You light candles, you have a special meal. And in every faith has this day of rest, but the issue is now only the really religious people do it. So I actually never thought it was available to me, because I only knew Orthodox Jews did a full day of rest. And I'm like, well, I'm a bad Jew. That's what I used to feel. I don't believe as strongly as they do, so it's not available to me. And then after my dad died, and my husband would tell me how profound it was to have a country shut down 1 day a week, we decided to turn off all screens from Friday night to Saturday night. And it was literally the best thing I've ever done. I loved that it was an ancient idea. I loved that it was this idea that has withstood thousands of years. There's a Jewish philosopher named Abraham Heschel that calls it a palace in time, which is so beautiful. And I started going deep on reading about Shabbat. And all the different faiths, what they thought about the importance of a day of rest. And in fact, in every great wisdom practice, it talks about the value of silence and listening to what's inside of you. If you're just reacting, you're never going to know what you think. You're never going to really hear your true thoughts. And so we started unplugging. We started going out in nature more. We started calling it our texture box. And it was like this immediate sense of calm every week. And this was 13 years ago, and we do it every week, done it every week. It's been the most transformative thing I've ever done in my life. Obviously, I love technology with the work I do, but we make challah, we have people over. I sleep the best on Friday nights because there's no technology near my bed. It's all downstairs underneath a napkin. I sleep the best sleep. There's the most joy on Saturday. We connect in a different way. We use maps. I bought an album and we play vinyl. I bought a Polaroid. It's analog day and it's awesome. To live as if you're in the 80s, just one day a week or beyond, it's like, you kind of just remember how to think and exist without the supercomputer calling at you every second. And my kids, so one daughter was just born and one was 6. And they've done it their whole life, and we would let them choose, what do you want to do on Saturday? So it's like a day filled with joy. It could be reading, it could be napping, it could be cooking, it could be thrifting, it could be going to a museum, whatever, it could be doing nothing. But I have to tell you, as a family, when I was growing up, we used to have family day. Like on Sundays, everything, the stores were all closed, and now nothing's ever closed. But it was like the day that I feel most grateful. And remember how I told you how the internet is designed to just make you want more and more and more and more? When I turn off the screens on Friday night, I feel an amazing sense of I have everything that I need right in front of me. It's like this incredible switch every week where I'm like, oh my gosh, the garden, the dog, the family, like everything just suddenly becomes, I have enough. I'm not wishing I was somewhere else or wanting the shoes, the red shoes, the this, that. I'm suddenly like absolutely in a state of feeling grateful. When you look up on the screens, amazing things are right in front of you, but if you're never looking at it, you're not going to see them. The other thing that's really interesting is time really slows down. And what's the one day of the week you want to feel long is your day off. And Albert Einstein talks about the theory of relativity, that time is relative to your state of motion. And if you're going so fast, reading the news and the emails and the text and notifications, you're just going really quickly all the time. When you turn all of that off, everything slows down in the most beautiful way. And this is a big one for me, is that I'm most creative on Saturdays. All of my best ideas, I mean, look at, we're in a room full of thinkers. They all come on Saturday. I'm a big journal writer by hand, and literally for 13 years, the big ideas come when I turn off the screens. So I look at creativity like an athlete. Like, when do I feel most juicy and creative? It is when I turn off the input. And I've made a lot of films about it. There is neuroscience to back this up. There's something called the default mode network, that when your brain starts wandering, when you're not pushing stuff out, it works with what's already in your brain. So your creativity is about making new connections. And so if you put your brain in a state of just like not being pushed stuff at it, you're gonna make unusual connections that you wouldn't have made if you have stuff directed at you all the time. So I have my best ideas. I spend a lot of time just like staring out the window. And then I feel most productive the next day. And if you think about Israel as a country, that's a very productive country. A very productive country for a country that really shuts down. There's no buses run, nothing happens for one day a week. The other thing that it's really taught my kids is, if we have a question about something, you know what we have to do? We have to ponder that question. We cannot look it up. We have a lot of books in our house, and it's a fascinating thing to teach your kids. Just, what's the answer? I don't know. Let's think about it. And it's a good skill for all of us to just ponder. And it's going to strengthen that curiosity part of our brain too. So we're online all the other days doing all the internet things, and then just one day letting it go. The other cool thing that happens is I reappreciate the internet every week, because on Saturday night, I'm psyched to go back online. I'm like, whoa, I live in the 21st century and I can look something up and I can text that person. So it's like, got this double hit every week. I can't wait to turn it off, and I can't wait to turn it back on every single week. And it kind of ripples throughout the week. And it made me very conscious of, if you're with a group of people and one person pulls out their phone, it's like a yawn. Everyone will pull. I mean, I was actually being very good. I didn't have my phone out for like the first day, and then I saw someone take their phone out, and I was like, oh, I don't want to take my phone out. It's so associative. If you see someone, everybody disengages once one person does. So at my film studio, everyone's phones were in their bags. And if you want to check it, go to the bathroom. I don't want to see you check it, because then I'm gonna want to check it. And so I started to be really mindful of how much I was influencing other people. Because it takes, when you get a notification and you're focused on a paper for etc. or whatever, 20 minutes it takes you to get back into flow. And so it makes me much more mindful of texting people. Like, do I really need to interrupt them for 20 minutes? Like, I try to think about, like, what am I doing to affect that other person? And so it makes me think a lot about, how do we want to live with this technology, which soon is going to be in our eyeball as a contact lens? Right now, I can tell you to put away your phone, but pretty soon it's going to be there. And instead of clicking, you're going to be blinking, and I'm not going to know if you're paying attention to me. So we are going to have the courage to step up and really say, you know what? I value being human. I value interacting with other people without being mediated, and I'm going to turn it off on my own. My husband and I like to call ourselves, we're both optimistic and skeptical, so we're optimists. Wait, you have to see the merging of the word. Optimists. It's very hard to say, but because I feel like I love it all. I love the connectivity, but I feel like we need to remember our humanity. I ended up writing this book, 24/6, that kind of goes deep into all of these issues. And then I performed it as a show 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Lance was there. And at the end of my show, which is like a version of this, but more theater, more music and audience interaction, I asked at the end of the show, what's it going to take for us to see the bigger picture? And guess what? 1 week later, the pandemic happened. Now, I think the pandemic was very similar to the way I felt like when my dad died and my daughter was born. It was like one of those moments where life was grabbing us by the shoulder. How are we living? What matters? Who do we want to spend our time with? What do we want to spend our time doing? Where do we want to live? Like, the big philosophical questions happen. And in any period of transformation, I think that's very exciting when everything gets shaken up. And if you look back in history, the bubonic plague, it's so much death and destruction, but then it eventually gave way to the Renaissance. And even going back to the 1918 pandemic, where so many people died, so many men died. Guess what happened right after that? Women got the right to vote. Enough things were shaken up in society that change happened. And so I think about COVID. What are the silver linings from this period? Well, a couple of them are that we saw what it was like when scientists from 172 countries came together to try to figure something out. That was very exciting to me. Like, that was the web at its finest of like people sharing scientific knowledge. I'm also fascinated as a working mom woman who always only had my staff go in 2 days a week, that the workforce is totally changing. I mean, if you would have told me 3 years ago that some companies were like, you never have to come back in, I would have said, that's Michigan. I would say that is impossible. So the fact that we're questioning, how many days a week do we need to be in person? How do we need to work? Do we need to be in an office and commute 5 days a week? And really questioning that. And again, these really big philosophical questions of how do I want to live my life? And I think that's an incredible opportunity. And I invite all of you this coming week, and I know we're on a Saturday, to try to see what it feels like to actually turn off the screen for an extended period of time. Maybe you start just with Friday night, try it for a Saturday. I'm 52 years old. It's the single best thing I've ever done in my life. And I feel like we've never needed it more now. And my daughter once said that no one's going to be at their end of their life and wish they spent more time on screens and wish they spent more time scrolling. And my dad, right before he died, he was this incredible speaker, and he lost his ability to speak. And we were all gathered around him for hours because he said, I had a realization. Can you imagine my dad having a realization as he's dying. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, what is he realizing? And we're like hovered around him. And our eyes are locked and he can't speak anymore. And my brother and sister and I have thought many times, like, what is he gonna tell us? But I think if I have the privilege to be that old and have my children and my grandchildren around me, and I couldn't speak, what would my eyes be trying to say? Would be, you know, more sitting around the table and more being present and being with each other for real, because you're gonna die. You never know when you're gonna die, but it can happen any day. And how can we not be present with the people that we love or that we respect? And how important that is. One of my favorite quotes is by Annie Dillard, which is, how you spend your days is, of course, how. So that is the end of this portion of the talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Tiffany and to our interpreters, translators, our support staff everywhere, all of you being here. Thank you.